Me too. Yeah, good morning, Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome to today's Shavuos crash course. We are just about 11 days out from Shavuos. Shavuos is starting in Sunday night a week. Sunday night a week, which is Monday and Tuesday. That's when we stay up all night long learning Torah, and we are going to be having TED Talks. So I would like to ask anybody that would like to give a TED Talk on a topic which is related to Shavuos, to Torah. If you can pull together a 10-minute TED Talk, we would love to have you present on Sunday night when we are supposed to be doing all-night Torah study. So please let me know if you would like to be part of the TED Talk, Torah TED Talk presenters. Welcome to the live studio audience over here, to Mickey Gottlieb. Good to have you with us. Keith, Rob, Ed, Steve, and to those that are with live online, I see Alicia, and on YouTube, it's hard to tell who's there. I think it's Elaine. Good. Okay, great. So let's get started. Today's discussion is all about the festival of Shavuos. Now, the thing about Shavuos, I'll do this relatively quickly. Good morning, Marty. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this idea of Shavuos. The idea is like this, is that there are no rituals about the festival of Shavuos. You know, you associate, Purim comes with the humble hamantash. The Pesach comes with a matzah, the 4 cups of wine. Hanukkah, the donut. But we don't really have much in Shavuos. We don't really have much ritual in Shavuos. Shavuos is associated with insomniacs. You know, people that stay up all night learning Torah, coffee, cheesecake for the dairy. But that's pretty much it. Nevertheless, it is the most important Jewish holiday because without Shavuos, there would be no other Jewish holidays. Shavuos celebrates the time when we received the Torah on Mount Sinai. This is the very foundation of Judaism. Let's begin with a quick timeline to put things into historical context. Good morning, Howard and Susan. Nice to see you. So the events began when we came out of Egypt in the year 2448, since the creation of the world. This would have been 3,333 years ago. Not too long ago. We came out of Egypt. The night that we painted our doorposts was the night of the Seder, the first Seder. The next morning we came out of Egypt. 1 week later, we arrived at the Sea of Reeds, and that is when we had the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, which is 7 days after the Seder. That is the Yontif at the end of Pesach, the end of Pesach Yontif. 3 weeks after that, our forefathers ran out of provisions, and God began to deliver to them. They ran out of the matzah that baked on their backs, and they then, good morning, Terry and Hannah, they then began to experience the raining of the manna. Is that what you were indicating, Keith? The manna began to fall down upon them, which is God's miraculous bread, which we still eat today. Because when you think about the extraordinary success which Jews experience, how we are the majority of America's most influential people, even though we are an absolute minority, that's because God is providing us with manna from heaven, right? Metaphorical manna, as opposed to the physical manna that they received back then. So this was 3 weeks after they crossed the Red Seas when they started getting the manna. They then ran out of water. You know, they the only time in Jewish history that the Jewish people went on a journey without a menu plan, without a meal plan. There was no clue. We had no logistics. We'll just rely on God. So they ran out of water. God was like, okay, no problem. Have Moses talk to a rock. He ended up hitting the rock, and the waters flowed out of the rock. Then they had a fierce fight with the nemesis of the Jewish people, the nation of Amalek. After the triumph, now Moses beats the nation of Amalek. He was sitting on a rock on the mountain, and he had 2 people holding his hands up. As long as Moses' hands were up, the Jewish people were winning. When they got tired, the Jewish people started losing. This is a manifestation of the hands of Moses, is a manifestation of Moses' Torah. When we study Torah, we succeed. When we become weak in the study of Torah, we fail. It's a very, very important truth for us to internalize. Hopefully 3,000 years of doing the same thing will teach us the lessons of Jewish survival. It's less to do with diplomacy, military, less to do with all that other stuff, and more to do with the fact that the master of the universe wants us to study his Torah, and that's the bottom line. When you study Torah, you win. You don't study Torah, you lose. Dean Dubansky, good morning. And Winston, Elaine Collins, and Cookie Gottlieb said, Boker Tov on YouTube. Thank you, Winston, for being our translator of the message. Much appreciated. That's great. Oh, it's Cookie and Winston. Fantastic. Thank you, Winston. Really appreciate that. Good. Then, After they beat the nation of Amalek, we arrive at Mount Sinai on the first day of the month of Sivan. Now, that's first day of the month of Sivan, right? So Nisan is the month of Pesach, then Iyar is the month after, and then the next month is Sivan. On the first day of Sivan, they arrive at Mount Sinai. On the second day, Moses climbs up the mountain, and God informs him that he has chosen the Jewish people as a nation of princes. A group of vagabonds is now going to become the nation of princes. And he offers to give them the Torah. Moses descends, relays the offer to the Jewish people, who quickly accept the offer. The very next morning, Moses climbs Mount Sinai and tells God that the Jewish people have consented. God proclaims that he would appear on Mount Sinai and reveal the Torah to Moses, and the Jewish people will be able to eavesdrop on God giving the Torah to Moses. Moses tells this to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people say, we would rather if God spoke directly to us. God, on the fourth day of Sivan, Moses goes up the mountain. A lot of schlepping here, right? They might have installed a cable car better, right? But Moses schleps. He goes back up the mountain on the fourth day. He relays the request of the Jewish people to God. They want you to talk directly to them. God agrees with the proviso that they spend 2 days preparing. And that would be the fourth day and the fifth day preparing for God's revelation. Early in the morning of the sixth day, God appears on the mountain amidst flaming fires and thunderous sound. An unending crescendo of the shofar's blast was heard, and the nation fell back in fright. Moses tells them, reassures them to come back, and God descends and reveals the 10 commandments to them, beginning with the famous words, Anochi Havaya Elekecha, I am God, your God. Okay? Now, it's interesting because the Jewish people were not the first people to be offered the Torah. You know about the story? It was offered to many other nations before it was offered to the Jewish people. Let's take a look what it says in the Medrash. The Medrash tells us as follows. When God offered the Torah, to give the Torah to Israel, he offered it not to Israel alone, but to all the nations. First, God went to the descendants of Esau, our uncle Esau. And he said to them, will you accept the Torah? They asked, well, what does it say in it? What am I buying? God replied, do not murder. They said, Master of the universe, the very identity of our father Esau is murder. So thank you, but no thank you. We cannot accept the Torah. God went to the descendants of Ammon and Moab. You know who Ammon and Moab are? Remember Abraham? Abraham had a nephew whose name was Lot. Lot, in the book of Genesis, was there when the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And he managed to be evacuated. He with his 2 daughters. They hid in a cave, and they thought they were only remnants of mankind. So the daughters seduced their father after intoxicating him, and they gave birth to 2 incestuous sons, Ammon and Moab. In fact, the word Moab means from the father. Can you imagine how disgusting a name that is, right? Ammon and Moab are basically incestuous cousins of ours. So they asked, what is written in it? God replied, do not commit adultery. So he said, Master of the universe, the very identity of our people comes from sexual immorality. We cannot accept the Torah. God then went to the descendants of Ishmael. These are our other cousins from the Middle East. And he said to them, will you accept the Torah? They said, what is written in it? God said, you shall not steal. They said, Master of the universe, the very identity of our father's robbery. We cannot accept the Torah. There was no nation that God did not approach and ask if they wanted to accept the Torah. Having no other choice, God then went to the Jews. And what did the Jews say? They said yes.
The joke is
the joke. I don't like that joke.
So how much? And this God said free. Jews said, okay, we'll take 10.
Right. There's a joke which speaks about the what's the word? The cheapness of the Jewish people, right? Frugality, self-deprecating, obviously, right? But yeah, okay, there's a self-deprecating joke, famous. Thank you, Rob. Kamsanut means to be a miser, a miserly, right? Good, okay. Well, we're not miserly. We're generous. We're broad-minded. We're Jews. We're broad-minded. So what happened was God offers the Torah to the Jewish people, and incredibly, they said yes. They said yes. In fact, they said 2 words. They said na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will comprehend. We will understand. Then we'll read it. So first they said we will do. We're committed. And then they said, and afterwards we'll read it. Now, I'd like to ask you guys a question. So, when you go buy a house, or get a job, or hire someone, sign a contract. Do you first read the contract and then sign? Or do you first sign and say, I'll read it later? What would you do? First, you read the document, and then you sign. So what on earth happened here at Mount Sinai? Good morning, Anita Mandelbaum Spector. Seems to be a friend of Terry. Where are you from, Anita? Yeah, so good to have you with us, Anita. Anyway, so what would you do? Would you sign a document before reading it? I mean, seriously, who in their right mind would say, yes, sir, whatever is in the book, I'm good? Who would do such a thing, right? And why do we celebrate?
That's what all our senators and congressmen do.
Oh, yeah?
They sign and read after.
That's interesting. Is this true? Well, potentially, right? So why do we celebrate such recklessness? We make a whole yontif out of the fact that we accepted the Torah without first reading it. But now herein lies the essence of the festival of Shavuos, of what we're actually celebrating. The realization of what is the uniqueness of the festival of Shavuos, how more than the Hamantash of Purim, and more than the menorah of Hanukkah, and more than the matzah of Pesach, the essence of Shavuos is the Torah itself, is God himself. Allow me to illustrate. You know, when you get onto an airplane, what's the first thing the captain says? He says, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. It doesn't start off with, I am your captain. Right, that'd be a little weird, right? Right? Imagine you get into an airplane and it says, ladies and gentlemen, this is your automatic pilot speaking. Your automatic pilot speaking. In my modern and carefully tested system, an error is absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible, right? So imagine, nobody gets on the plane and hears, I am your captain. Yet this is how God begins the Ten Commandments. The reason is because the Zohar tells us, I conveys our truest essence. See, our lives are like an onion. We have multiple layers of complexity in how we present ourselves to the world around us. You know, to our friends, we present our social selves. To our family, we present our emotional selves. To our teachers, it's our intellectual selves. Our colleagues, it's our professional selves. To our business associates, it's our entrepreneurial selves. But when do we really present our true selves? Almost never. I mean, even ourselves, we don't really know our true selves. There is one time when we do expose our true selves, and you know who that is to? To our spouses. To our spouses. You don't think so?
Not 100%.
Really?
I agree.
You do think so? Well, what love is supposed to be, right? Love is supposed to be, he says 1,000,000%, not 100%. Love is supposed to be the exposing of vulnerabilities. To love someone is to give them the ability to hurt you, to make yourself vulnerable to them, that they could hurt you, and to hope, and to trust that they won't. Right? We make ourselves vulnerable. To everybody else, we're not vulnerable. Suit, tie, you know, all my airs around me, right? But when it comes to your spouse, true love is just myself, my essence, right? This is what happens. Oh, but let me just think a second. What are we celebrating at a wedding? Think about it. Think about a wedding. What are we celebrating at a wedding? Two people that now have lost their freedoms? Like what is this? Like what exactly are we celebrating here, right? That we now have two people who have lost their freedoms, and we're making a big party out of this because you know why the husband breaks breaks the glass under the chuppah? Because it's the last time he gets to put his foot down. Right? So we say Mazel Tov, right? But what's really going on over here? The answer is that we're not throwing away our freedoms. We're establishing a connection.
Why is everything with the wedding breaking? You break the plate, you break the glass.
Because the way I explain it is that glass is very easy to break and it's very hard to make. Just like a relationship. You want to break it? Just let go.
Real easy.
You want to make it? It's going to take blood, sweat, and tears.
Same with the plate.
Same with the plate. A relationship, the plate we do at the engagement, we break a plate, and at the wedding we break a glass. Because this is the essence of a relationship. There is no happily ever after. Right? There is only courage, wisdom, and a lot of humility. And that's what's going to keep this relationship going. Because if you think there's going to be an autopilot, forget about it. It's going to break.
Well, that's it. Naim and the fourth are more machmir than even in Suim.
Yeah, I don't want to get into technicalities of that kind of stuff. So what we're celebrating at a wedding is not celebrating the fact that the two people are throwing away their freedoms. We're celebrating a beautiful connection. That's what we're celebrating, right? You know, in marriage, man and woman become one. The problems begin when they try to figure out which one. But really, what it's about is 1 + 1 = 1. That's what marriage is really about. Intimacy is into you, into me, see, right? Just 1 + 1 = 1. That is what marriage is all about. And the cause for celebration is because they're opening their essence to each other. And that is something which is beautiful, to be cherished for a lifetime. When we look at back to Mount Sinai, what was happening at Mount Sinai was not a business deal where God gives us a business card and he's like, pleased to meet you. He starts with I, Anochi. I am God, your God. This is my essence. I'm giving you my pure self. I would like to be your God. Would you like to be my people? That is the offer that was being made to us at Mount Sinai. God was offering us an intimate connection with each of us. You know, one of the unique revolutions that Tanya teaches us is that Judaism is not a religion, it's a relationship. It's not about all the things you have to do and the things you're not allowed to do, or you're going to get zapped. It's about what you do because you're in love. It's about the relationship. And Tanya teaches us how to nurture those emotions, right? God, as we learned yesterday in Tanya, I mentioned this in an example. I said that God is with us in the car and he put us in the driver's seat, right? Because God he puts himself in our hands, right? I want to trust you with my most vulnerable, intimate, and private treasure, with myself. Are you willing to have me? Right? God made himself vulnerable to us. This is the meaning of the opening words of the Ten Commandments. I am God, your God. And here he says to us, good morning, Rob Saunders. I'm going to get to the comments in just a moment. Okay, so God made himself vulnerable to us. And what do we say? We said, yes. Nasta v'nishma. Right? The Jews already, when they crossed the Red Sea, 6 weeks before the receiving of the Torah, they already said, when they sang the song at the sea, they said, Zeh kei livian veyu. This is my God, and I will glorify him. They addressed God in the first person. Zeh, this is my God. This is the God that we desire, that we love. So they already had expressed the desire to a personal connection. When they were offered this offer at Sinai, they go what they prayed for. They immediately said yes. So now we can understand why didn't they read the contract, right? So why did they suddenly say yes? Why didn't they read the contract? The answer is because we all do this. You know, Rob gave us an example yesterday, which I'm glad you're here again. And I'm glad Marty's here too. You know, you were talking about the cow. The cow yesterday. He said, did you go to look at the cow, measure the cow, walk the cow, milk the cow before you buy the cow, right? And you're applying the same analogy to marriage. But that's fundamentally flawed analogy because you don't really do that before marriage. You don't, I think that actually some people do that actually. I think this is the problem. When people live together for 10, 20 years, just to see if things are working out, right? Just to see if things are working out. And then right?
They get married and it doesn't work out.
And it's interesting it doesn't work out, right? It's interesting how often it doesn't work out, right? See, the thing is what people are viewing, they're looking at the marriage as a business deal. They're like, I want to make sure everything works. I want to make sure I'm not buying a lemon here. I'm doing my due diligence. It takes me 50 years to do my due diligence, right? Yeah, exactly. You do your prenup, You got your forensic accountants. You got this whole. I'm like, for heaven's sake, is there any room left for love and intimacy after all this is done? A real relationship, and I want to say the way we do it in the Jewish tradition. You date, you meet a few times, you make sure you're on the same page, you make sure that you're drawn towards each other, at least physically, and that you have a desire to spend time with each other. And then we both jump in together. We say, okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jump, right? Because what you're doing is you're building the relationship on a foundation of trust. You're saying, listen, by the way, this is the reason why we cover the bride under the chuppah. I'm sure you've heard this from me before. I love to talk about it. We cover the bride under the chuppah. Think about it. The bride, she covers her face, right? Why does she have a veil? The bride, it took her 8 hours to get dressed. Makeup 2 hours, hair 3 hours, nails, God knows what else she was busy with. When I go dress my chuppah, I think I did it in 3 minutes flat. I was ready. I was out the door, ready to roll. The wives, they're sitting of their hair, and it's like a whole salon spa situation going on, right? If you want to cover someone's face, cover the groom's face. But with all the makeup that's going on there, why are you covering her face? The reason is, good question, right? You like the question, right? So the reason is because, I hope the woman can like what I'm about to say, unless they've signed off already. Hopefully not. The reason is because when you're getting into a relationship, you're saying, look, you're beautiful. I love what I see, but that's not why I'm marrying you. I'm not marrying you because everything seems to be working right now and seems to be great. That's what happens in the Hollywood relationships. As long as you got the $1 million contract with Netflix or I don't know who, as long as you're a world superstar, gymnast, football star, right? That's got the contract. That's great. The minute he breaks his leg, right? I'm out of here. I mean, I'm not married to you. I'm married to your contract. So the minute you lost the contract, I'm out of here, right? So what we're doing here is just saying this. Everything looks great and it's wonderful, but that's not why I'm marrying you. I'm marrying the hidden. I'm marrying what I cannot see. I'm marrying your essence. I'm marrying you, not how you look, right? I'm marrying you, not your money, right? I'm marrying your essence, and that's why we cover the bride, right? Because you know what? There will come a time when she's not looking that beautiful. There'll come a time when he's not as successful or as joyous or who knows what. When the laundry starts coming out of the closet like 6 years later, that's when you realize, oh my God, I didn't even recognize you anymore. But that's when the essence of love comes in because we're united to each other, right? So that's why the way we do a marriage is that we say, look, as long as things seem to be working out, we're on the same page, we share the same interests, and we're attracted to each other, and we have the same general life goals. If she wants to live on planet Mars and he wants to live on Earth with 12 kids, it's going to be a big problem. But if you share the same values and the same goals and aspirations, right, and you have similar trajectories or background, then you can go for it. Because we all do this in the fact that we get married, right? A guy gets into a taxi arrives just on time. He says, perfect timing. You're just like Ryan. Ryan, the driver says. Who's Ryan? She says, Ryan Robinson. He's a guy for whom everything went right. Like my coming along. No, sorry. It was, sorry. So the passenger says to the driver, he says, Ryan is the perfect person. He's the guy for whom everything always went right. Like you, the driver, when I needed you, you fell perfectly into place. So the driver says, I'm sure certain things didn't work out well for Ryan. He says, no, you're wrong. Everything about Ryan was perfect. He was a terrific athlete. He sang like an opera baritone. He danced like a Broadway star. And you should have seen him play the piano. There's more. He remembered everybody's birthday. He knew all about wine. He knew which foods to order and which fork to use. He could fix anything, unlike me. He was an amazing guy. He did everything right. He never made a mistake. He really knew how to make people feel good. His clothing was always immaculate and his shoes were highly polished. He was the perfect man. Nobody could ever measure up to Ryan. So the driver says, he's an amazing fellow. Can I meet him? So the passenger says, no, I never met Ryan. He died. I'm married to his widow. Okay, so marriage is a contract that we get into, unlike Ryan. We get into not because of the person is perfect, not because it's business, but because it's a relationship. It's not about the product, the cow. It's about the connection. It's not about me. It's about us. That's what happens in a marriage. And when you come in with that attitude, the burdens just are no longer burdens. You know, like the story my daughter shared at her bat mitzvah about a guy trudging up a mountain carrying a bag of rocks. And he seemed to be enjoying it. So somebody asked him eventually one day, he sees him every day going up and down the mountain with a bag of rocks. He says, how do you enjoy this schlepping? So the guy says, well, if you knew what I was carrying, then you would have a different perspective. He says, what are you carrying? A bunch of rocks. He says, no, open up. He sees a bag of diamonds, right? When you realize that you're carrying a bag of diamonds, it's a whole different story, right? When your burden is not exactly your burden, when you understand the purpose of it all. So marriage is not a sentence that robs us of our freedom. It's a platform that grants us the deepest form of freedom, which is the freedom to touch another on the deepest level and to be touched by another on the deepest level. Essence calling unto essence, right? You know, when we ask a stranger for a favor, it's really, the stranger is usually focused on the favor, and that's why it can be a burden. But when we ask a spouse for a favor, the spouse is focused on us, and that's why it becomes a pleasure. So the errand becomes a labor of love. It's no longer a problem. The act of service is not a chore. It's a beautiful opportunity to connect, because the relationship is not about the product. It's about the connection. This is another opportunity. Oh, I can bring you water in the middle of the night. Fantastic. I can show my love to you. I'm happy to jump out of bed and bring you the water. I'm happy to take out the garbage. Act of service is fantastic because it's about the relationship, and I'm thrilled to be able to show my love to you. It's not about the hassle. And the more we do for each other in a relationship, the stronger the connection. So on an airplane once, a rabbi lands in Australia, and he calls right away, calls his wife, tells her she landed safely. And the people around also, they all call their loved ones. There's one guy next to the rabbi, he says, I'm the only free person here. I don't have to call anybody. So the rabbi looks at him and he says, it's true, you don't need to report to anyone. But in return, no one in the world cares if you landed or didn't land. What a tragedy. How crushingly lonely. How incredibly sad. So when God introduced himself to us on Mount Sinai, he's offering us a relationship on the deepest level. He put his happiness in our hands by giving us actionable ways to make him happy. And that's what it says in the Torah, right? And we looked at all these mitzvahs as opportunities. I don't care what the mitzvahs are. As far as I'm concerned, it could tell me to climb trees all day, to chop wood, or to stand on my head. It's the same thing. I don't care. To fill in black, to fill in pink. What's the difference? It's an act of service. It's not about the journey. It's about the destination. It's about the connection, and we jumped at that. And that's what it says in Tanya chapter 46, which is our next chapter in Tanya. No, 2 chapters from now. No, sorry, it isn't. This next chapter we learned. We just finished 45. So here's what it says in Tanya. Tanya tells us that each mitzvah is actually a marital connection. And that's why we say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, God, master of the universe, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. What does it mean, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav? Who has sanctified us with his commandments. The word kiddushanu in Hebrew means marriage. Kiddushin is a marriage. What we're effectively saying is, blessed are you, Lord our God, who is marrying us through the commandment to light Shabbos candles, through the commandment of separating challah, through the commandment of laying tefillin. What we're doing each and every single time that we say the blessing on a mitzvah, we're saying, God, this is an intimate moment of connection. I'm thrilled to be giving you an act of service because I love you and you love me. Let me share this idea with you in the original words of Tanya. Tanya chapter 46. So God forsook the higher and lower realms, choosing none of them but Israel, his people, whom he brought out of Egypt, the obscenity of the earth, to quote Genesis. The place of spiritual filth and impurity, not through an angel, not through a messenger, but God himself did so in his glory. As the verse states, and I descended to save him from the hand of the Egyptians in Exodus, in order to bring them near to him, Mount Sinai, in true closeness and unity with a genuine soul attachment. Like a man who betroths a wife, so that she would be united with him in perfect bond, as the verse states, and he shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh, Genesis. Exactly similar and infinitely surpassing it, infinitely surpassing the union of husband and wife, is the union of the divine soul that is engaged in Torah and the commandments with the light of the infinite God. That's what happens each and every single time that we do a mitzvah. God is telling us, your choices matter to me. Your behavior is important to me because you matter to me. What he's asking of us is of little relevance when you understand the bigger picture of what's going on in Mount Sinai. Whereas the other nations of the world were focused on the what, we, the Jews, when offered the Torah, focused on the why. When God offered us my Torah, the nations focused on Torah, we focused on my. It's yours? Absolutely. Whatever it takes. I mean, look, in my relationship with my wife, whatever my wife would ask me to do, I'd say yes. I don't care what it is. You know why? Because I trust her and I love her. That's it. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, I mean, I would say yes. And hopefully we'll be able to pull through, but essentially that's the concept. All right, let's take some questions and comments coming in here. Winston again. Elaine wrote on YouTube, referring to God having offered the Torah to the other nations, etc. How does this mesh with the forefathers having already kept the Torah before Sinai? So we do know that the forefathers, select individuals, did keep the Torah before the Torah was given, and this is true. I don't understand why that would be a conflict, Elaine. I don't really understand. Would that be a conflict? If the forefathers as individuals, Judaism was an opt-in, opt-out system before the Torah was given. It wasn't biologically inherited. It was opt-in, opt-out, After the Torah was given, it became biological. So I think that would answer your question. David Rosen in Lakewood, thinking of you, Terry. Let's see if there's other comments on YouTube. I think we got those. Good. Any questions from the live studio audience here, guys? Yes, go for
I
it.
have a problem with your analogy of the relationship between people and God and a marriage. If you, when you first met Hannah, pulled out a piece of paper and said, Hannah, there are 613 things that I need you to do. And if you do all 613 things, we're going to have a wonderful marriage. I think Hannah would have said, David, very nice meeting you. This isn't going to work out because it's compromise. It's a little negotiation. I'll do this, you'll do that. The Jews didn't have that opportunity. Well, you know what, God, I like 400 of them, but I really like bacon. I'll take everything else, but I want to be able to eat bacon. So it's really not the same. We took the Torah on face value and accepted it. Great, I get that. But to compare it to a marriage, it's not the same.
So you're saying that when it comes to marriage, you negotiate a contract. This is a lawyer in you coming out here again.
No, it's
I'm not sure if everybody heard the question from Rob. Rob has a fundamental problem with the analogy of marriage to our relationship with God, because when it comes to our relationship with God, God lays out the terms. You either accept them or not, and that's it. But when it comes to marriage, he says negotiate. Negotiate.
Or no, not negotiate. Compromise.
Okay. So let me ask this question. If
When Hannah tells you to take out the garbage, you really want to take out the garbage? No, you do it because you love Hannah, and that's why.
So you do it because you love her. So very good. So what's the problem?
It's not, but
That's exactly my point.
You're compromising.
Why am I compromising? She asked me to take out the garbage. I take out the garbage. Why is that a compromise?
Because you didn't want to take out the garbage.
I'm doing what she wants. I'm done. There's no compromise. There's full commitment. That's not a compromise. A compromise would be, like this. Generally speaking, I want to tell the ladies over here that when a man tells his wife that he's going to get the job done, he will get the job done. There is no need to remind him every 6 months. So that would be a compromise. That would be a compromise. I'll take out the garbage. It might be 6 years from now. I'll take out the garbage, but I'll take out the garbage. That would be a compromise, right? But if you take it out running, you stop what you're doing, and you go take out the garbage, that is an act of total submission and total commitment and total love. Look, if let's say, I don't know, a high-ranking politician in Washington, political affiliation undisclosed, okay, offers you her hand in marriage, okay, and she says, listen, I happen to be the vice president of the United States of America or something like that, right? And if we're going to get married, I'm going to have to live in Washington. And this is what, life is going to look like for the most part. I'm an FBI agent, or I don't know what. I'm Attorney General in the United States. These are my obligations. So are you in or out? This is my terms. I mean, I'd like to get in a relationship with you, but it's got to be with these terms, right? So what you're offering, Rob, is saying the other way around. You're saying that, no. You're telling me, I'm willing to get into a relationship with you, but we're going to have to start from zero, right? And we'll build this relationship from the ground up. But God happens to be Almighty Master of the universe. He happens to be, in a position of prominence, right? So he says, listen, I'm willing to have a relationship with you, and these are my terms, right? A woman says the same thing. A husband says the same thing. I mean, there's obligations. In a ketubah, there's obligations. You're committing yourself to 10 different things in the ketubah, right? I think that when you marry someone, they're not a blank piece of paper. There's baggage that comes along with every single person, and you're buying into that baggage. God happens to be very straight up with us. When you get married, normally it takes like 20 years to understand that there are problems. Then it takes another 10 years to have the courage to face those problems, right? And maybe another 50 years to solve those problems if you're lucky, right? God comes into the relationship. He says, listen, guys, this is my baggage. Here it is. He puts it on the table. A pleasure. Can you imagine you walked into a relationship and your spouse says to you, okay, these are my problems. I'm ADHD. I'm OCD. I take this drug. I'm suffering from lack of self-esteem because of my abusive mother, my absent father, right? My parents' broken marriage, right? Puts that on the table, and these are my triggers, these are my buttons, this is what makes me tick. That would be pretty good if you got an operating manual with your spouse, right? That's what God is giving us. He says, this is how we'll thrive. I mean, I think that's a pretty good thing. I think that's actually a good analogy. Anyways, that's my point over here. Marty says, so Rob. I'm not sure what that would be in reference to, but it seems to be a jab at Rob here. Okay, good. Let's try to wrap this crash course up with some closing comments about the 10 commandments. Why do we have 10 commandments? So God, we spoke about the essence of Shavuos, which is about a relationship. It's not about the headache. When a kid gets a car at 16 years old, 16, 17, whatever age it is, kid gets a car, right? Let's think about this for a moment. I think this might be even a better analogy. Kid gets a car, you give him a key. Is he thinking to himself, ach and vey, I have to remember every road sign. I've got to remember all the rules of the road. This is going to be a nightmare. I've got to remember 6,000 rules about when I'm allowed to speed, when I'm not allowed to speed, all the functions of the car, what things I'm not allowed to do. The kid doesn't think about any of that. He says, I've got freedom. This key represents freedom. Yes, freedom will only apply when I follow the rules of the road. Otherwise, I get into an accident, maybe die, right? But all the rules are nothing. As we say in Hebrew, katan alav. They're small on him in the face of freedom, right? Only a fool would say, well, you're going to have to really reconsider whether you want to accept that key because it comes with a lot of baggage. Same thing with a marriage. You say, look, a mature person says, I love you. I couldn't care less about what your baggage is. Whatever your baggage is, I'll take it. That's love. Someone who comes in with an immature approach to marriage says, well, I've got a few choices over here. I don't know. Do I like the fair skin or the dark skin? Do I like the blonde? Do I like the black hair? That means your vision is not focused on where it's supposed to be focused. You're seeing yourself. You're looking into a mirror. You're not looking into a person. Superficial, right? Klippa, right? Okay, so I think that would be an interesting example about the freedom of the car keys versus the details, right? Okay, so we spoke about Anochi, which is the opening words of the 10 Commandments that represents the essence of Shavuos, which is what we're celebrating over here. Shavuos is when we stay up all night long with the Torah because we're celebrating our extraordinary love for the Torah. We realize that this Torah is what shattered our glass ceilings, what allowed us to reinvent ourselves, to be married to God Almighty. Can you imagine how incredible that is? No other creation on earth is able to say that he has a marriage to infinity, to God Almighty. Only the Jew is able to do that. Why? Because God said, here, I'm giving you my Torah, Anochi. And that's what we're celebrating in Shavuos. So the menorah on Hanukkah, the matzah on Pesach, the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, it's the Torah on Rosh Hashanah, on Shavuos. The Torah is the mitzvah of Shavuos. And that's why we study Torah all night long. Good. Now, why 10 commandments? Why these 10 commandments? Is it because they're the top 10? Is this like the trailer of Judaism? right? Like, what is this? Like, why do we have these 10 commandments? Like random selections. The reason is because they lay out the essence of a relationship. Sinai is about the relationship, and these 10 commandments lay out the ingredients of a relationship, right? Because you'll notice there's 2 tablets. The first tablets is religious commandments. The second tablets is social commandments. So the first tablets is stuff like believe in one God, no idolatry, don't blaspheme, keep Shabbos, honor your parents. That's religious stuff. The social stuff, don't murder, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't lie, don't covet your neighbor's wife, don't commit adultery, right? The reason for these 2 tablets is because God is establishing a relationship with every single Jew, not just the pious ones. He says, not only if you're a rabbi or a cantor, but even if you're just a Joe the plumber, I still want a relationship with you, right? To the point that even when a murderer overcomes his murderous desire and he doesn't murder, that's already pleasurable before God. That already becomes meaningful and holy for God. And the hope is that that's the first step. There's 2 tablets. The hope is that you'll mature from curbing your sinful thoughts to actually become elevated to the first tablets, which is more of a lofty calling. But the essence is that God wants a relationship with God on every level, wherever we're coming from. In other words, God comes down to our level with the hopes that we will eventually rise to his level. And this is the theme of the Torah being revealed on Mount Sinai. As the Medrash tells us that there was it's compared to a king who decreed that the people of Rome shouldn't go down to Syria and the people of Syria shouldn't go up to Rome. So too, when God created the world, he had heavens be his domain and the earth is the human domain. Heavens are holy and the earth is unholy. Came Torah, when God wished to give the Torah, he rescinded the decree. He opened the borders. And he stated the lower realms can now rise to the higher realms to become holy, and the higher realms can descend to the lower, and I will be the first, and hence God comes down to Mount Sinai. We now are able to rise. In other words, he's breaking the glass ceiling. The relationship with God is not just for the righteous people, it's even for the lowly sinners, because God is placing his happiness in the hands of all Jews, even the lowly person who is inclined to murder. And this is also the reason why the tablets are square. You know, the Rebbe explains and proves that the tablets were not rounded on top, they were square. Yeah, that's a misrepresentation of Christian artists. But really, the tablets were square, and the reason is because they fit perfectly into the Ark of the Covenant, right, which was a box. And if they were rounded, there would be empty space between the rounded edges, right? And since nothing that God creates in this world is for no reason, therefore, it could not possibly have been rounded and needed to be square. It's an interesting discussion that the Rebbe presents, right? So what happens is that each, so far we've learned that Sinai, God offered a personal relationship with every single Jew. And it's every single Jew, even the one that are very lowly and sinners, are able to make God happy by merely abstaining from their murderous desires. And even the lowliest Jew is able to develop a high regard for Torah, right? But by now having the 2 tablets, they're right next to each other. What happens is that they're right next to each other, because what happens is that the one on the left is the motivation for the right. And I'll show you how I mean. There's 5 sets. Let me show you how it works. So, for example, when it comes to the 6th commandment, do not murder, which is relating to the 1st commandment on the same level, right? They're right next to each other, square, right? I'm God, your God, belief in one God, and do not murder. What happens is that I am God, your God is the real motivation for do not murder. Because if you want to, you can justify murder. Like the Nazis. The Nazis are very sophisticated people. They were cultural, intellectual people. They said, well, certain people are vermin, are subhuman. They don't deserve to live. Therefore, we'll kill them. But when you realize that every person is created in the image of one God, then you cannot use your own prejudices to justify murder ever. Right? You can never do murder. You're allowed to kill. Murder's in cold blood. You're allowed to kill someone that's deserving of that has violated his own image of God. But when you talk about someone that you just happen to not like because they're your enemy or something, that way you cannot justify their murder because they too are created in the image of God, right? A second one, the number 7 is number 2 is don't worship idols, and that's corresponding to number 7, which is don't cheat on your wife, on your husband. Right? What's the connection between no adultery and no idolatry? Because God is saying that don't serve idols because that's effectively cheating on me. You're effectively cheating on our relationship if you're serving idols, right? It's easy for us to worship idols, to put our trust, gates of trust, to put our trust in items like money, stock market, doctors, vaccines. It's easy. But God is saying that's an idol, right? And you're cheating on our relationship. Number 3 and 8 is don't blaspheme, don't say God's name in vain, corresponding to do not steal. Now, what that is that don't say my name in vain means believe in me. I believe in my holiness. Where God is effectively saying, I give everybody what they need. And if you're stealing, then you're forgetting that I give everybody what they need. You can't take from one to give to another. Robin Hood might have had a good, you might have justified Robin Hood by saying, well, he's giving to the poor, so even though he's stealing from the rich, we can justify it. You can't do that, because when you realize that God is holy, can't say my name in vain, I give everybody exactly what they need, that motivates us to realize that you can never, ever, ever steal, even when you want to justify it. Number 4 and 9 is observing the Shabbos versus not lying, not bearing false witness, right? What's the connection? This one's an easy one, because Shabbos, anybody who rests on Saturday is remembering the fact that God created the world in 7 days. 6 days God worked, and on the 7th day he rested. So in other words, the observance of Shabbos is a testimonial to the fact that God is the master of the universe and he created the world, right? And finally, the last one is number 5 is honoring your parents versus do not covet, right? Don't covet your neighbor's wife or something, right? Because when you're honoring your parents, that is a deep sense of gratitude. You're being a mensch. You remember the people that cared for you when you couldn't care for yourself, even if you don't like them. And even if they weren't nice to you. When you honor your parents, you're showing gratitude to those that are worthy of so those that were good to you, right? And coveting is the opposite of that, is not showing gratitude to Hashem for what he's given you, rather you desire more than what he's given you, right? As you being ungrateful, okay? And this then is, I'm going to wrap it up by saying why the tablets were square, because they were two columns perfectly aligned with each other. And this is also why right after the 10 Commandments, we get two mitzvahs, two instructions. Number 1 is don't worship idols of silver and gold, right? Don't worship idols of silver and gold, because God is telling you, don't focus on the gold and the silver. Don't get lost in shiny stuff, right? Don't get lost in that which is attractive to the eye. Remember, it's about the relationship, right? So don't worship idols of silver and gold. And then God says right away, you shall make altars out of the earth. Because you got to be, in order to make the relationship work, you have to be humble like the earth. Make yourself like the earth. That's the essence of a marriage. The essence of a relationship is when you put the other person on a pedestal higher than you, always giving them the benefit of the doubt. And it should be an altar. It should be a place of sacrifice where you're able to put them before yourself. And this, my friends, concludes our presentation today on the Shavuos crash course, because now we hopefully have clarified that Shavuos is the essence of all the Jewish holidays. It is the beginning and the cause, the raison d'etre of all of the Jewish holidays, because this is what brought us into the marriage, brought us into the relationship. And therefore now, with 11 days to go, it's time to prepare for our wedding. That's why we're counting the Omer. We're doing the countdown to our own wedding day. We can do this. Let's reinvent our connection with Hashem this year in a way that's never been done before. Any questions or comments? Anyone questions or comments? Don't forget, by the way, that tomorrow night, Thursday night, we're starting a brand new JLI course about hope for a better tomorrow, which is the course about the Jewish belief in Mashiach. It's called This Can Happen, and it's starting tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. Please register. Let us know you're coming at jewishgardens.com/RSVP. That's jewishgardens.com/RSVP. And this was the Shavuos crash course. Let's make it a meaningful Shavuos. Remember, if you'd like to present a TED Talk, a 10-minute TED Talk on the night of Shavuos, we would love to have you join us and make the presentation. Just let me know if you can do a 10-minute TED Talk presentation on a meaningful Jewish topic. And thank you, Winston, for posting the link to the JLI course. It's actually jewishgardens.com/JLI. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you joining us here today. Have a wonderful day, and shalom.
Very good.
Thank you so much.